Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
General Hospital recap for Friday, November 7th, reveals that Jen Sidwell's death was Sonny Corinthos' last resort while a Riddle man stirred up trouble. In Jack Brennan's office, he shocked Laura Collins with the news that Anna Devane had apparently been called back into the WSB for a classified operation, so the police manager was now unobtainable until the op was done. At Bobby's, Emma Scorpio Drake tried playing nice with Britt Westbourne, who claimed they were working together and that Emma would be allowed in the lab. Emma was tempted to try stealing the crucial fob while Britt was on the phone, but she eventually couldn't pull it off. Latterly, Charlotte Cassadine assured Emma that she could get the job done. Since the mayoral debate was passing tonight, it was the ideal time for the lab break heft. Lulu Spencer also spoke with Charlotte about Valentine Cassadine being transferred stateside, while Carly Spencer let Valentine know the same thing during her visit to Steinmauer. Valentine allowed that Carly's capability to manipulate Brennan into this decision was evidence that she was his weak spot. Still, Valentine wanted Carly to be careful since Brennan could go after those she watched about formerly he set out about her deception. Despite the pitfalls, Valentine assured Carly that together they could bring Brennan down. Back at Bobby's, Laura complained to Lulu about the Anna situation since Ezra Boyle could use the police manager's absence against her crusade. At GH, a Riddle man described on Felicia Scorpio as she dealt with a James West drop-off extremity over the phone. That man was putatively posing as a sanitarium hand when he handed over some paperwork to Felicia. After the Joe snared up a pencil that was about to fall on the bottom, it got Felicia's attention. Felicia called out to man with questions about the train that he'd given to her. At Ava Jerome's place, Jocelyn Jacks left so that Lucas Jones could speak with Marco Rios intimately. That gave Marco a chance to profess his love and bend Lucas on the idea of moving in Windmere with him. Jocelyn made her way back to Jack's office, where she filled him in on having to leave when Marco arrived with a move heft offer for Lucas. Although Jocelyn wanted to advise Lucas about all the Sidwell peril, Brennan hovered to lock her up for disloyalty if she did. Brennan also ordered Jocelyn to support Lucas move in with Marco and make him suppose it was a good plan. During a meeting about art at Windmere, Sidwell spoke to Ava Jerome about his desire for peace with Sonny. Ava claimed it'd be insolvable if Sonny perceived him as a trouble to his children. Latterly, Sidwell was surprised to find that Britt had slipped in undetected and had been staying on Ava to leave. Britt and Sidwell wrote about Professor Henry Hank Dalton compactly, but also Lucas arrived with Marco. Sidwell covered by acting like he'd been on the quest for a concierge croaker. Before he set out, Britt lost her medical license. Britt protested that she was working on getting it back and ultimately exited, but she stuck around to listen and outdoors. Marco gave Sidwell updates on Lucas getting on board with his move-in idea as Britt heated in on the discussion. At Sonny's place, Jason Morgan went over a backup plan regarding the peers, but he conceded that barring Sidwell would be the easiest way to go. Sonny rattled off a list of reasons why it'd be parlous to wipe Sidwell off the chart. Although killing Sidwell had to be their last resort, Sonny conceded his amenability to do it once they ran out of options. General Hospital spoilers say Sonny and Sidwell's feud will come with some twists and turns, so stay tuned. The humid air of Port Charles clung to everything it touched, a heavy, invisible shroud that seemed to amplify the tension simmering just below the city's surface. For Samantha McCall, stepping out of the taxi and onto the familiar cracked pavement felt like crossing a threshold into a past life, a life of chaos, passion, and relentless danger. She had left seeking clarity, a respite from the constant storms that defined her existence. But a mother's intuition is a force more powerful than any tempest, a silent, screaming alarm that had begun to ring in her soul from miles away. It was a call she could not ignore, pulling her back to the epicenter of the hurricane, her daughter, Scout. Meanwhile, in a sun-dappled park that belied the gathering darkness, Scout Peregrine's laughter tinkled like wind chimes, a pure, innocent sound in a world growing increasingly complex. She was perched on the shoulders of the man she knew as her father, Drew Kane. To any observer, it was a picture of idyllic father-daughter bonding. But the eyes of the observer can be deceiving. Drew's smile, once as warm and genuine as the California sun, was now a tight, practiced curve of his lips. The warmth in his eyes had been replaced by a cold, calculating focus. The man known for his steadfast morality and gentle strength was gone, replaced by a stranger forged in the crucible of memory manipulation and a burning, all-consuming vendetta. Act I, The Unraveling. The transformation in Drew was a subtle poison, first noticed by those who loved him most. Elizabeth Weber, his steadfast partner, had watched the change with a growing sense of dread. The man who returned from his obsessive quest with Jason Morgan was not the man who had left. He was harder, sharper, his conversations laced with a new, ruthless pragmatism. I just don't recognize him sometimes, Monica, Elizabeth confessed quietly, sitting in the Quartermain mansion's grand living room. She wrung her hands, a nervous habit she thought she'd long since abandoned. He talks about leverage and neutralizing threats. He's talking about people, about Jason, as if they're obstacles in a business merger. It's not him. Monica Quartermain, the family's matriarch, her face etched with the lines of countless family tragedies, offered a weary, knowing look. The Quartermain men have always had a capacity for great love and great destruction, often in equal measure. Whatever they did to him at that facility, it didn't just give him his memories back. It took something essential away. Drew's entire worldview had been recalibrated. In his mind, Jason Morgan was not a lost brother but the architect of his stolen life. Every hardship Drew had endured, every moment of confusion and pain, was laid squarely at Jason's feet. And Jason's greatest vulnerability, he had coldly calculated, was not his own son, Michael, but the daughter he cherished, Scout. In Drew's twisted new logic, making Jason feel the same profound loss and powerlessness he felt was not just a goal, it was a moral imperative. His plan was not one of violence against the child, but of severance. He began with encouraging words, a carefully constructed campaign to alienate Scout from her biological father. During his custodial time, he would weave subtle narratives. You know, Scout, he'd say while pushing her on the swings, some people only bring trouble. They can't help it. It's just who they are. Your dad. Jason, his life is very complicated. And that complication can be dangerous for little girls. Scout, her young brow furrowed, would try to process this. But Daddy Jason tells me stories. He's silly. He can be silly, Drew would concede, his voice dripping with false reasonableness. But the world he lives in isn't silly. It's dark. And I am your dad, your real dad, and my only job is to keep you safe and bright, away from all that darkness. Forever. He began filing motions for full custody, his arguments meticulously crafted to paint Jason as an unfit parent by association, a mob enforcer whose very existence was a threat to any child in his orbit. He presented himself to the court, and to anyone who would listen, as the stable, reliable, and morally upright alternative. The baptism of this new, vengeful Drew Kane had begun, not with water, but with a slow, steady drip of poison into the ears of his loved ones and the halls of justice. Carly Corinthos, seeing the change, tried to breach the fortress he had built around himself. Drew, this isn't you, she pleaded, cornering him at the Metro Court. This anger, this vengeance, it's Jason's brother I'm talking to. The man who believed in second chances. Drew's gaze was icy, devoid of the camaraderie they once shared. The man you knew was a ghost, Carly, a patchwork of someone else's memories. I'm whole now. And I see things with perfect clarity. Jason is a cancer in this town, and I will not let him infect my daughter. If you stand with him, you're standing against her safety. The angry threats were no longer veiled. They were promises. Act 2, A Mother's Instinct. Sam's return was not announced. She moved through the city like a shadow, her first stop not her own apartment, but the doorstep of Elizabeth Weber. The two women, bound by a complicated history and their shared connection to the men at the center of this maelstrom, stood facing each other. Elizabeth's eyes welled with tears of relief and fear. You felt it, too, she whispered, and it wasn't a question. I dreamt it, Sam replied, her voice husky with exhaustion and anxiety. I dreamt of Scout calling for me, and Drew's face was wrong. Tell me everything. As Elizabeth laid out the chilling details, the coldness, the legal maneuvers, the venomous rhetoric aimed at Jason, Sam's blood ran cold. This was beyond a simple parental disagreement, this was a targeted, psychological siege. Drew was weaponizing his paternal rights, and he was doing it with the cold precision of a military strategist. Her next stop was Jason's penthouse. The air between them was thick with a lifetime of unsaid things. Their love had been a wildfire, burning hot and destructive, but the embers of a deep, abiding trust still glowed. He's going to take her from us, Jason, Sam said, her voice trembling not with weakness, but with a ferocious maternal fear. He's not just fighting for custody. He's trying to erase you from her life, and he's using the law to do it. Jason Morgan, a man of few words, felt a familiar coldness settle in his gut. He had faced down assassins, rival mob bosses, and death itself, but the thought of losing his daughter was a terror unlike any other. I won't let that happen. It's not about muscle, Jason, Sam insisted, her mind, once the sharpest investigative tool in Port Charles, whirring back to life. He's baiting you. He wants you to react, to do something reckless that proves his point. We have to be smarter. A fragile alliance was reforged in that moment. Not as lovers, but as parents united in the defense of their child. They were a formidable combination, Jason's unwavering resolve and Sam's brilliant, intuitive cunning. The confrontation with Drew was inevitable. Sam found him at the park, watching Scout play on the jungle gym with a possessive intensity. Sam, he said, his voice flat, not even feigning surprise. I heard you were back. You're scaring me, Drew, she said, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. The things you're saying, the way you're talking about Jason, this isn't you. The Drew I knew would never use Scout as a pawn. Drew turned to her, and for the first time, Sam saw the full, unnerving emptiness in his eyes. The Drew you knew was a fantasy. I am Scout's father. I have been there for every skinned knee, every nightmare, every birthday. Jason provided the DNA. I provided the life. And I will not allow his criminal world to touch her. If that means I have to be the villain in your story, so be it. The encouraging words were gone, stripped away to reveal the steel beneath. Stay out of my way, Sam. The courts will see the truth. I will have full custody, and I will make sure Scout forgets the man who puts her in danger every single day. Act 3, The Point of No Return. The day of the preliminary custody hearing arrived, cloaked in a gray, drizzling rain. Drew was meticulously prepared, his suit crisp, his demeanor that of a concerned, rational parent. He presented his arguments with chilling conviction, detailing Jason's associations, the violence that seemed to follow him, the inherent instability of his life. Sam, sitting beside her lawyer, felt a knot of despair tightening in her chest. He was good. He was making sense to anyone who didn't know the whole, twisted story. The hearing adjourned for a brief recess, the judge clearly weighing the arguments. Drew, feeling the momentum was with him, was granted his scheduled afternoon visitation with Scout. He was to pick her up from Kelly's. This was the moment his plan shifted. The legal process was too slow, too uncertain. The angry threats he had made in private were about to become a terrifying reality. He had no intention of taking Scout for ice cream and returning her. He had a car packed, cash, and a plan to disappear, to baptize his daughter in a new life, free from what he saw as Jason's toxic influence. At Kelly's, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Molly, who was watching Scout, felt a prickle of unease as Drew arrived. He was too calm, his movements too efficient. Ready for our adventure, Scout? He asked, his voice a poor imitation of its former warmth. An adventure? Scout asked, her eyes wide with excitement. A very long one, Drew said, his gaze meeting Molly's for a fraction of a second too long. It was a look of finality. It was this look that Molly immediately reported to Sam. Something's wrong, Sam. He didn't have her overnight bag. He just said they were going on a long adventure. He was creepy. Sam's heart hammered against her ribs. Her every instinct screamed that this was it. The point of no return. She tried Drew's phone. It went straight to voicemail. She called Jason. He's running. He's taking her, Jason. Act 4, The Rescue. Drew drove with a focused intensity, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror, checking for tails. Scout, sensing the shift in mood, had grown quiet in the back seat. "Where are we really going, Dad?" she asked, her small voice laced with confusion. "Somewhere safe, baby. Somewhere we can be together without any bad people around." He pulled into a secluded, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a temporary holding point before they switched to a less traceable vehicle he had stashed. The rain was falling harder now, sheeting down the grimy windows. He carried a bewildered Scout inside, the cavernous space echoing with their footsteps. "I want Mommy," Scout whispered, her lower lip beginning to tremble. "Mommy made her choices," Drew said, his voice echoing in the emptiness. "Now I'm making mine for us." Back in the city, Sam's mind was a whirlwind. Think, Sam, think. Where would he go? Not the airport or train station, too public. He'd need somewhere to lay low, to switch cars. She remembered a case from years ago, a fugitive Drew had helped track as a Navy SEAL. He'd talked about the mistakes amateurs make, about using obvious, isolated spots. One location he'd mentioned offhand was an old shipping warehouse by the docks, a place he said was predictably unpredictable. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble on a shred of a memory. She relayed the information to Jason, who was already on the move. "I'm closer. I'll meet you there." Jason's voice was a low growl over the phone. Sam drove through the rain-slicked streets like a woman possessed, her hands clenched on the steering wheel. Every second felt like an eternity, every red light a personal affront. She arrived at the warehouse complex, her car screeching to a halt just as Jason's motorcycle pulled in beside her. Inside, Drew heard the engines. His face contorted in fury. He'd been found. He scooped a now-crying Scout into his arms. It's okay, I won't let them take you," he murmured, but his words were frantic, frightening her more. The large metal door screeched open, and Sam and Jason stood silhouetted against the stormy gray light. "Let her go, Drew," Sam's voice rang out, clear and commanding, cutting through the din of the rain. "You don't get it. You're delivering her right back into the line of fire." Drew shouted, backing away, holding Scout tighter. She was sobbing now, terrified by the shouting and the raw anger vibrating through the man holding her. "You're the only danger here," Jason stated, his voice low and deadly as he took a step forward. "Don't come any closer," Drew yelled, his eyes wild. "I am her father. I will do whatever it takes to save her from you." In that charged moment, Sam knew that force would only escalate the situation into a potential tragedy. She held a hand out to stop Jason. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, her entire focus on her daughter. "Scout, baby," she said, her voice softening into a soothing melody, a stark contrast to the hostility. "It's Mommy. Everything is going to be okay." She locked eyes with Drew, her gaze not pleading, but firm and unwavering. "Drew, look at her. Really look at her. You're terrifying her. The man who taught her to ride a bike, who read her goodnight moon 1,000 times, who held her when she was sick, that man would never, ever put this look on her face. That is the real you. Not this, stranger." Her words were a key, trying to unlock a door buried deep within him. For a fleeting second, the chaos in Drew's eyes cleared. He looked down at Scout's tear-streaked, terrified face pressed against his chest. He felt her small body trembling in his arms. The reality of what he was doing, the trauma he was inflicting on the child he swore to protect, crashed down upon him like a physical blow. His arms loosened. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a horrifying wave of shame and confusion. In that moment of hesitation, Sam surged forward. She didn't snatch, she gathered. She gently pried Scout from his arms and pulled her into a fierce, safe embrace. "I've got you, sweetheart. Mommy's got you. You're safe. Scout clung to her, her sobs subsiding into hiccuping whimpers. Jason moved to stand between them and Drew, a silent, immovable shield. The confrontation was over. The immediate danger had passed. Drew sank to his knees, the echo of Sam's words, that man would never, ever put this look on her face, repeating in his mind, a devastating condemnation. Epilogue, the aftermath. The fallout was swift and severe. Drew was taken into police custody, not for kidnapping, but for endangerment and violating the custody agreement. The legal battle was far from over, but the events in the warehouse had irrevocably shifted the landscape. No judge would look favorably upon a parent who fled into a storm with a terrified child. In the quiet of her apartment, Sam rocked a sleeping Scout in her arms, stroking her hair and whispering promises of safety and love. The baptism of fire was over. Her daughter was home. Later, she stood with Jason on the balcony, the lights of Port Charles twinkling below. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean, for now. He's sick, Jason, Sam said quietly. What they did to him, it broke something. The Drew we knew is still in there, but he's a prisoner. Jason nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The angry threats had been neutralized, but the man who made them was not their true enemy. The enemy was the psychological poison that had created this version of Drew. The war for Scout was no longer a legal one, it was a battle for a man's soul. And as the city slept, Sam, Jason, and a broken Drew Kane knew that the real work, the long, painful road to healing, or the final, tragic descent, was just beginning. The echoes of the ordeal would linger, a somber reminder that in Port Charles, the most dangerous threats are not always from the outside, but from the demons that take root within.